The alien village once had green fields, shining under the twin suns. Their crops were tall, their rivers were clear, and their storage houses were always full. But now, the land was empty. The soil was dry and cracked. The water had turned into muddy pits, and hunger was spreading through every family. Children cried softly at night, their thin hands clutching their stomachs. Mothers whispered to them, promising food tomorrow, even when they knew there was none. Elders sat in silence, their eyes heavy with sorrow, remembering better days. The whole village felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the end on this desperate day. The villagers gathered in the center square. They argued about what to do. Some said they must leave and search for another land. Others said leaving meant death, because the desert outside the village stretched for endless miles. No one had a solution. The air was filled with fear and hopelessness. And then, from the dusty path that led to the far mountains, a stranger appeared. He was small, thin, and unlike the aliens. He had no scales, no horns, no glowing eyes. He was a human boy, no older than 15 years. His clothes were torn, his face covered in dirt, and in his hands he carried a bag full of strange broken things. The villagers stared at him in shock, whispering among themselves, "Is it an omen?" One elder asked, "Or another mouth to feed?" Another said with bitterness. The boy walked slowly into the square, his eyes scanning the sad faces. He said nothing, only looked around at the empty fields and the piles of useless trash thrown to the edges of the village. The aliens expected him to beg for food, but instead he knelt down, touched the dry soil, and frowned. It was as if he was studying the land itself. The chief of the village, an old alien with silver skin, stepped forward. "Human child," the chief said, "why are you here? This is no place for wanderers. We have nothing left to give, not even to our own." The boy stood up slowly, his eyes calm. "I don't want your food," he said in a quiet voice. "I want to help." The villagers burst into laughter. Help? From a child? From a human who carried nothing but scraps and trash? It was impossible, they thought, but there was something in his eyes, a steady fire, that made some pause. Night fell, and the human boy sat by a small fire at the edge of the village. The aliens kept their distance, watching him with suspicion. He opened his bag and pulled out strange objects, pieces of wire, broken glass, a bent spoon, a cracked bottle, and fragments of alien metal he must have found on his journey. To the villagers, it looked like nothing but garbage, but the boy looked at it with careful eyes, as if each piece had meaning. The youngest alien child, a little girl with green eyes, walked closer. She tilted her head and asked, "What are you doing with that junk?" The boy smiled faintly. "Junk to you maybe, but to me, tools." The girl frowned, not understanding, but she stayed to watch. The boy began arranging the pieces, testing how they fit, how they connected. Sometimes he whispered to himself, words from his own language. The child watched with curiosity, feeling a strange hope that she could not explain. In the main hall, the chief and elders discussed in hushed voices, "Why is he here?" One elder said, "Humans are weak, they are no saviors. Perhaps he is a spy," another said, "sent from the outer colonies to watch us die." But the chief shook his head, staring at the small fire in the distance. "No," he said slowly, "that boy carries no weapons, no army, only broken pieces. Yet look at him. He works with the focus of someone who believes in something. Something we have already lost hope." The night grew colder, and the villagers returned to their homes. But some could not sleep. They kept glancing out their windows at the flickering light where the boy worked. His shadow bent over the scraps, his hands never stopping. What could a human child build from garbage? The question filled their minds with both doubt and uneasy curiosity. By dawn, the boy stood and looked at the fields again. His hands were black with dirt, his eyes tired but bright. The little alien girl ran to him and asked, "Did you make something?" The boy only shook his head. "Not yet, but I will." He looked at the empty fields, the starving village, and the piles of useless trash. And in his heart, a plan began to form. A plan no alien could imagine, a plan that could either save the village or fail completely. The story of the human boy had just begun, and though the aliens did not yet know it, their future was about to change forever. The alien village woke to another hungry morning. The fields were still empty, the rivers still dry, and the air heavy with despair. But while the villagers sat quietly, the human boy was already awake, walking slowly through their homes and paths. He looked at everything with sharp eyes, not like a child wandering, but like a thinker searching. The villagers followed him with whispers. "Why does he stare at the broken tools?" One muttered, "Why does he lift our trash and turn it over in his hands?" Asked another. Some laughed, others frowned, but no one understood his actions. The boy picked up a cracked water jar, shook it, and studied the lines of the break. He touched the soil where the crops once grew, rubbing it between his fingers. As though testing its secrets, he walked to the storage house, now nearly empty, and tapped the wooden beams as if listening for a hidden sound. Everywhere he went, he was curious, his eyes shining with thought. One elder grew annoyed and approached him. "Human, why do you wander among our ruins? Do you not see that nothing is left? This land is cursed." The boy looked up calmly and said, "Cursed land? No, only broken, and broken things can be fixed." The elder shook his head and walked away, convinced the boy was foolish, but the words lingered in the air. Making some pause, broken things can be fixed, was it really true? By noon, the boy had gathered a pile of objects from the trash heaps. Bent metal rods, dull wires, shattered mirrors, even bones from dead animals. The villagers gathered to watch him, whispering again. "He is playing like a child," they sighed. But the little alien girl with green eyes whispered, "No, he is building." The boy squatted down and drew shapes in the dust. Strange lines, circles, arrows, and numbers that meant nothing to the aliens. He studied his drawings, then rearranged the scraps to match the symbols. His hands moved with purpose, his brow furrowed in concentration. One young alien warrior sneered, "Look at him, scratching on the ground like a lost animal. He thinks dirt and junk can feed us?" But the girl answered boldly, "At least he is trying. What have you done?" The warrior turned away, embarrassed, and the villagers fell silent. The boy worked for hours, connecting pieces, tying them with thin wires, using broken glass like lenses. He tested how light from the twin suns bounced on the glass. He poured a little muddy water through a hollow bone, then studied how it dripped. Every failure made him nod, as if learning something valuable. Every mistake became a step forward. When the device he made collapsed with a sharp snap, the villagers laughed. "He has wasted the whole day," one said, but the boy only smiled faintly. "Failure teaches me the way," he whispered. At night, the villagers returned to their homes, but many peeked through windows to watch the boy. The little girl sat beside him again, her eyes full of questions. "Why do you care?" She asked softly. "You are not one of us. You could leave and no one would stop you." The boy stared at the stars above and said, "Because hunger looks the same in every world." The girl did not fully understand his words, but they filled her with warmth. She decided to stay by his side, bringing him bits of rope, wood, and cloth, anything that could help. Together, they continued arranging pieces under the pale light of the moons. By dawn, the boy had drawn even more strange symbols in the dirt. Now the sketches looked like parts of a machine pipes, wheels, a shining disk for the sun. The villagers saw it and shook their heads. "What is this madness?" they muttered, but none could deny that the human boy was working with a focus they had never seen before. The chief of the village came forward at last. He studied the boy's drawings, then looked at the pile of scraps. "Human child," the chief said, "do you truly believe you can make something from this? This trash is all we have left." The boy met his eyes steadily. "Then it is enough." The villagers gasped at his boldness. Enough? Could trash really be enough to save them? The chief said no more, but his gaze lingered on the boy with a spark of silent hope. That night, the boy worked again, this time building something taller than before. It rattled and hissed, sparks leaping. As wires touched, the villagers gathered nervously, some in fear, others in awe. The machine gave a sudden burst of light before collapsing into smoke. The villagers shouted in anger, "Useless! Foolish human!" But the boy simply sat down beside the broken parts, wiped the sweat from his face, and whispered, "Closer next time, it will work." The aliens did not believe him, but the little girl did. She smiled and whispered back, "I will help you, in." The silence of that night, among the ruins of a starving village, the bond between a human boy and an alien child began to grow. And though the villagers did not know it, his strange curiosity was leading to something far greater than any of them could imagine. The sun rose heavy and bright over the alien village. The villagers awoke to another empty day, their stomachs aching, their hope fading. But while most sat in silence, the human boy was already at work. His small hands moved quickly, tying wires together, balancing broken rods and setting glass pieces into strange angles. The little alien girl with green eyes stood beside him, handing him tools and scraps. Her face was full of curiosity, her heart full of belief. No one else dared to stand so close. The others watched from a distance, muttering, "What can he do? He is just a child. Humans know nothing of our ways. He will fail." The boy said nothing to them. His focus was unshaken, his eyes steady. Piece by piece, the invention grew taller. Looking like a fragile tower made of trash, it rattled whenever the wind touched it, wires sticking out like veins, broken bottles glimmering like crystals. It looked strange, almost foolish, but the boy's hands moved with purpose. At last, after hours of work, the boy stepped back and breathed deeply. The little girl tilted her head. "What is it?" The boy wiped his brow and said softly, "A start." He called the villagers to gather. They came slowly, with frowns and folded arms, their eyes sharp with doubt. The chief himself walked forward, his silver skin reflecting the morning sun. He looked at the boy and asked, "What is this tower of junk? Does it feed us? Does it give water?" The boy nodded firmly, "It will." Then, with trembling hands, he turned the device toward the sun. The glass pieces caught the light, the wires hummed faintly, and a low vibration filled the air. The villagers leaned closer, some holding their breath. The boy poured a cup of muddy water into a hollow pipe at the top of the machine. The water trickled through wires, glass and metal parts. The device hissed, sputtered, and shook. For a moment, there was silence. Then a thin stream of clear water dripped from the bottom into a cracked bowl. The villagers gasped loudly, eyes wide. "Water!" Someone shouted, "Clean water!" Cried another. The little girl's face lit with joy. She looked at the boy with shining eyes. "You did it!" But before more drops could fall, the machine groaned loudly. Sparks flew, wires snapped, and the tower collapsed with a crash. The bowl tipped over, spilling the few drops of water into the dirt. The villagers shouted in anger, "Failure!" One cried, "He tricked us." Another roared, "What good is a human child? He only plays with junk while we starve." The boy stood silently, his face calm though his heart was racing. He looked at the broken pieces at his feet, then said quietly, "It almost worked. I only need to make it stronger." The villagers turned away in disgust. Some cursed under their breath, others shook their heads. Only the little girl stayed by his side. She touched his sleeve and whispered, "I saw it. It made water. Even if it broke, it worked for a moment." The boy smiled faintly at her words. "Yes," he said, "failure is a teacher, and I am learning." That night, while the village slept, the boy returned to the pile of scraps. His hands searched through the darkness, picking out stronger rods, thicker wires, larger glass. The little girl followed quietly, carrying what she could. The moonlight shone on their faces as they worked together. The boy sketched new symbols in the dirt, changing lines, adding circles, making the design sharper. The girl asked softly, "Why do you keep trying when everyone laughs at you?" The boy paused for a moment, then answered, "Because they laugh now. But one day they will drink from what I build, and when they do, their laughter will turn into thanks." She nodded, her small hands clutching the scraps tightly, together. They worked until their fingers ached and their eyes grew heavy. In the main hall, the elders whispered to the chief. "This boy is dangerous," one said. "He gives false hope. He wastes time we cannot afford," another argued, but the chief sat silently, his eyes fixed on the boy's fire in the distance. Finally, he said, "Perhaps false hope is better than none." By dawn, the boy had rebuilt a smaller version of his machine. This time it was stronger, the base solid, the pipes thicker. He tested it again, pouring muddy water into the top. The villagers, curious, despite their anger, gathered once more. The machine trembled, rattled, and hissed, and once again, clear drops of water appeared. Falling slowly into a cup, the aliens gasped, their eyes wide with hunger and wonder. It was still weak, the water only a trickle, but it was real, proof that something was possible. The boy lifted the cup and held it out. "Not enough yet," he admitted. "But it will grow." The chief stepped forward, his gaze sharp. "You may continue, human child," he said. "But know this, if you fail again, the people will turn against you." The boy nodded, undaunted. "I will not stop until it works," he replied, and so with nothing but scraps, broken tools, and his own determination, the human boy took his first step toward saving an entire village. It was only the beginning, but even in failure, a spark of hope had been lit. The human boy's second attempt had shown promise. Though the water that dripped out was little, it was enough to silence some of the doubt in the village. The aliens could no longer say he was only playing with junk, but they still whispered, "A few drops cannot save us. We need more, much more." The boy listened to their doubts but did not answer. He sat near the ruins of his broken machines, staring at the scraps as if they were puzzle pieces waiting to be solved. The little alien girl stayed beside him, her green eyes full of quiet belief. She whispered, "You will do it. I know you will." The boy only nodded, his mind already racing with new ideas. That night, when the villagers slept, the boy slipped away from the fire and walked toward the edge of the desert. The little girl followed him silently, curious. He climbed a small hill where the twin moons lit the cracked soil. From his bag, he pulled out something the villagers had never noticed before. It was small, flat, and broken, an old human solar panel, cracked down the middle. The girl gasped softly, "What is that?" The boy touched it carefully, his fingers tracing the cracks. "In my world," he said quietly, "this catches the power of the sun. We used it to give light, to heat, to grow." The girl tilted her head. "But it is broken." "Yes," he whispered, "but even broken things can still teach. Even broken things can still work a little." He placed the panel on the ground, tilting it toward the moonlight. It gave only a faint spark, but his eyes brightened. The girl watched in awe as the boy connected the faint spark to a piece of wire, making a tiny light glow for a heartbeat. She clapped her hands with joy. "It lives." The boy smiled faintly. "Not enough yet, but I will find a way." The next day, while the villagers searched weekly for food, the boy collected more strange items. Shards of mirror, polished metal scraps, broken dishes with shiny surfaces. The villagers mocked him again. "Why take mirrors when we have no food? Why carry glass when our children starve?" But he ignored their words, his mind fixed on something they could not see. By evening, he had arranged the mirrors in shiny scraps in a circle on the ground. When the twin suns rose the next morning, their light bounced from one mirror to another, concentrating into a single bright beam. The boy shielded his eyes and whispered, "Yes, this is the way." The little girl asked, "What are you making now?" The boy knelt and began drawing new designs in the dirt. "This village has no machines, no tools, but it has light. Your suns give more power than any fire. If I can use that power, I can give your fields water again." The girl's eyes widened. "You mean, you will make the suns feed us?" The boy smiled faintly. "Not the suns, but their gift." At night, the boy worked in secret, setting the mirrors carefully, connecting them to pipes, and using the cracked solar panel as a guide. His hands trembled from hunger, but his eyes never lost their brightness, he whispered to himself, remembering human knowledge, how sunlight could boil water, how steam could turn wheels, how energy could be caught and used. Each memory was like a hidden treasure unlocked from his past. Little girl helped him carry stones to hold the mirrors steady. She asked, "Why do you never stop? Even when you fail, even when they laugh?" The boy looked at her and said softly, "Because I have seen what happens when people stop trying. Hunger wins, death wins, and I will not let that happen here." One evening, the chief came to watch. Silently from a distance, the villagers whispered around him, "He wastes time, he chases dreams." But the chief did not silence them. His eyes followed the boy's hands as he adjusted the mirrors again and again. Finally, the chief muttered to himself, "Dreams may be all we have left." By the third night, the boy's invention was taking shape. The mirrors formed a large circle, focusing light into a single spot. A blackened metal pot sat at the center, filled with muddy water. As the suns rose, the focused light boiled the water, sending steam into a pipe he had made from old bones and bent rods. The steam hissed, rising high. The villagers watched in silence, afraid yet curious. The boy guided the steam into another container, letting it cool. When it dripped out, it was clean water, clear and shining in the cup. The villagers gasped in shock. "It is true!" One shouted, "He has taken the sun itself and given us water." Another cried. But the boy shook his head. "Not enough yet. This is only a beginning. This is just one drop of what can be." The chief stepped forward, his voice heavy. "What is it you are building, human child?" The boy looked up, his face tired but steady. "A secret from my people," he said. "A secret hidden in trash and light. With this, I will not only make water, I will make food." The villagers fell silent, their disbelief clashing with new hope. Could this boy, with nothing but scraps, truly turn light into life? The little girl smiled, her voice full of certainty. "He will, I know he will." And as the night fell again, the boy worked harder than ever. The hidden secret of his invention was no longer just his own. It was becoming the last chance for an entire village. The village woke to a strange sound at dawn. It was not the cry of hungry children or the whispers of despair. It was a hiss, steady and sharp, like steam escaping from a hidden pipe. The villagers rushed to the center square, their eyes wide, their hearts uncertain. There under the glow of the twin suns, the human boy stood beside his strange circle of mirrors. The broken glass and bent metal reflected sunlight into a single blinding spot. At the center, the black pot boiled furiously, steam rising high into the air. The little alien girl stood beside him, her small hands clutching a bucket, her face glowing with hope. The villagers gasped as drops of clean water fell from the pipe into the bucket. They watched in silence, their mouths dry, their eyes desperate. The boy lifted the bucket, holding it carefully. "This is only the beginning," he said softly, his voice carrying in the wind. The chief stepped forward, his silver skin shimmering under the light. He took the bucket from the boy, his hands trembling. He raised it to his lips and drank. The water was pure, clear, alive. The chief's eyes filled with tears, and he turned to the people. "It is real," he whispered. "The human has given us clean water." The crowd erupted in cries, some of joy, some of disbelief, some of hunger for more. Children rushed forward, their small hands reaching out. The boy poured water into cups and bowls, giving each child a sip, their faces lit with relief. Their voices rose in laughter for the first time in many weeks. But not everyone was convinced. One elder snarled, "Water is not food, we cannot." Live on drops alone. This is a trick, a toy, nothing more. The boy looked at him calmly, then said, "You are right. Water is not enough, but water is the first step." That night, the boy worked harder than ever. The little girl stayed by his side, carrying scraps, polishing mirrors, and bringing broken parts to him. The villagers, drawn by their thirst and curiosity, gathered again to watch. They whispered to one another, their voices low, "Perhaps he truly can save us, or perhaps he will fail again." The boy ignored their words, his mind racing with ideas. He remembered human knowledge, how steam could power wheels, how sunlight could be turned into energy. He connected rods to bones, tied wires to scraps of wood, shaped glass into small lenses. His invention grew stranger, more complex, more alive. By morning, the boy revealed something new. The mirrors focused the sun's light, boiling the water, turning it to steam. The steam pushed against a wheel made of bent metal plates, spinning it slowly. The villagers gasped as the wheel turned, creaking and rattling. The boy smiled faintly. "Now it begins," he whispered. The wheel powered a grinder made from stones and broken rods. The boy poured in dried alien roots, things the villagers had thrown away as useless. The grinder crushed them into powder. Then the steam condensed back into water, mixing with the powder in a container. A thick paste formed, smelling strange but not rotten. The boy dipped a spoon into it and tasted carefully, his eyes lit with quiet victory. He held it out to the little girl. "Taste," she hesitated, then took a bite. Her eyes widened. "It is food," she cried. The villagers gasped in shock, pushing closer. The chief stepped forward, his voice shaking. "Food? From trash?" The boy nodded firmly. "From trash, from roots, from what you left behind. Combined with water and light, it becomes life again." The crowd broke into chaos. Some cheered, falling to their knees in thanks. Others shouted in disbelief, "It cannot be real." But the children rushed forward, tasting the paste, and their weak bodies seemed to grow stronger. For the first time in many seasons, the sound of laughter rose from the starving village. The boy stood silently, watching them. He did not smile. Not yet. He knew this was only a small victory, a fragile step forward. The machine was weak, the food limited, but it had worked. It was the breakthrough he had been waiting for. That night, the village did not sleep. They gathered around the boy, watching him repair and strengthen his invention. Some offered him better scraps. Others helped polish mirrors or carry stones. For the first time they worked together, human and alien side by side. Yet not all were convinced. One elder muttered, "This is dangerous. This human child plays with forces we do not understand. What if it breaks? What if it poisons us?" But the chief silenced him. "Enough, can you not see? He has given us water. He has given us food, something no one else could do. We will not stop him." The boy looked at the chief and said quietly, "I cannot do it alone. If you want more, if you want your fields to live again, I will need your help." The chief nodded slowly. "Then you shall have it." As the twin suns rose once more, the human boy stood in the center of the village, his strange machine humming beside him. The villagers gathered around him, no longer only doubters but willing hands. Together, they would build something greater, something that could feed everyone. The breakthrough had come, and the boy knew one truth with certainty. Hope had returned to the village, and nothing could stop it now. The human boy's strange invention had given the aliens water and food paste. For the first time in many seasons, the sound of laughter returned to the starving village. Children played again. Elders whispered blessings, and mothers looked at their little ones with hope instead of sorrow. But hope was fragile, and the machine was still small. It could only feed a few at a time, and the village had many mouths. The boy knew it was not enough. He sat near the humming machine, his hands black with dirt and his eyes heavy with exhaustion. The little alien girl knelt beside him, her green eyes watching closely. "You look tired," she whispered. "But you won't stop, will you?" The boy shook his head. Not until everyone eats. The chief called a meeting in the main square. The villagers gathered, their faces torn between joy and fear. The chief raised his hand and said, "The human has shown us hope. He has given us water and food. But the machine is small. It cannot feed us all. If we want to survive, we must build a larger one." A murmur spread through the crowd. Some shouted with excitement, "Yes, let us help him. Let us build." But others shook their heads in fear. "It is dangerous. He plays with fire and light. What if it destroys us? What if the food turns to poison?" The voices rose in argument, anger mixing with desperation. The boy stepped forward, his voice steady though soft. "I cannot make a bigger machine alone. I need your hands, your strength, your belief. If you want to live, you must trust me. If you do not, then hunger will return, and nothing can save you." The villagers fell silent, the truth heavy in his words. At last the chief nodded. "We will help." But even as the people agreed, doubt lingered in their hearts. The next morning, the work began. The boy drew new designs in the dirt. Larger and more complex, he showed them where to place mirrors, how to carry rods, how to polish scraps of glass until they shone like crystal. The aliens were clumsy at first, unused to such strange tasks. Some broke pieces by accident. Others grew angry and shouted. But the boy never raised his voice. He only said calmly, "Try again. Failure teaches the way." Slowly, the villagers began to learn. Fathers carried heavy stones to steady the mirrors. Mothers tied wires with strong knots. Children polished glass with cloth until it gleamed. For the first time in memory, the whole village worked together. But not everyone joined. One elder refused, crossing his arms and spitting on the ground. "You are fools," he growled. "A human child leads you like sheep. This machine will break, and when it does, you will curse his name." His words spread like poison, making some villagers hesitate. Fear grew again, and the work slowed. The boy noticed the hesitation, but he did not argue with the elder. Instead, he worked harder, faster, showing the villagers with his actions that it was possible. When a mirror cracked, he replaced it. When a pipe burst, he patched it. When steam hissed dangerously, he calmed the fire and fixed it. Every mistake became a lesson, every failure a step forward. One night, as the boy and the little girl worked under the moonlight, she asked, "Why do you never fight their words? Why do you not shout back when they doubt you?" The boy looked up at the stars and said, "Because shouting does not build, work builds. If I waste my breath in anger, the machine will not grow." The girl nodded, her heart swelling with pride. Days passed, and the larger machine began to take shape. The mirrors now stood tall like shining walls. The pipes connected into a network that hissed and rattled. At the center, a great pot boiled under the sun's light. The wheel spun faster, driving the grinder. Mixing water with roots and scraps, the smell of food drifted through the air, filling the village with hunger and hope. But just as success seemed near, disaster struck. One of the mirrors slipped loose, crashing to the ground with a thunderous sound. The beam of concentrated light shot wildly, burning a patch of soil into black ash. The villagers screamed, pulling back in terror. "It will kill us!" Someone shouted. "This is madness!" Cried another. The elder who had doubted from the start raised his voice. "See? I warned you. This machine is a monster. It will destroy us all." The villagers wavered, fear battling against hope. The boy rushed forward, covering the loose mirror with a sheet of cloth. Calming the beam, he turned to the crowd, his voice loud and steady for the first time. "Do not fear the mistake. Fear giving up. Mistakes can be fixed, but hunger cannot. If we stop now, you will return to starving. If we continue, we will live." His words rang through the square, striking their hearts. The villagers looked at one another, torn between fear and survival. At last, the chief stepped forward and raised his staff. "We will continue," he declared. "No invention comes without danger, but no life comes without risk. This is our chance, and we will take it." The people slowly returned to the work, though their hands still trembled. Together, they lifted the mirrors, patched the pipes, and steadied the machine once more. The boy guided them with calm instructions, showing them how to anchor the pieces safely. His determination burned brighter than the suns themselves. By nightfall, the machine was stronger than before. The villagers collapsed with exhaustion, but their hearts carried new fire. They had faced fear. They had faced failure, and still they continued. The challenge was great, but they were no longer alone. The boy looked at the little girl and said softly, "Now we are close, very close." And though the stars above were cold and distant, in the village below, a new light was growing. The light of unity, of courage, of hope. The twin suns rose slowly over the alien village. Their golden light touched the mirrors of the boy's great machine, making them gleam like a wall of fire. The villagers gathered in silence, their faces pale with hunger but glowing with hope. They had worked for many days and nights, side by side with the human child. Now the time had come to see if their struggle would bring life or only more disappointment. The boy stood at the center, his hands steady though his heart raced. Beside him, the little alien girl clutched his arm, her green eyes filled with trust. The chief stepped forward, raising his staff. "This is our last chance," he said in a deep voice. "We have given our strength to this machine. Now we shall see if it returns strength to us." The boy nodded, then gave the signal. The villagers tilted the mirrors into place, focusing the sun's light into the boiling pot at the heart of the invention. Steam roared through the pipes. The great wheel spun, and the grinder began to turn. The sound filled the air like thunder, rattling through the square. The boy poured dried roots, alien plants, and scraps once thought useless into the grinder. The wheel crushed them into powder, mixing them with clean water from the steam. Slowly, thick paste poured into a container at the bottom. The smell rose into the air, warm, rich, alive. The villagers gasped, their eyes wide. The boy dipped a spoon into the paste and held it up. "This is food," he said firmly. "Food for all of you." The little girl was the first to taste. She closed her eyes, chewed slowly, then smiled with joy. "It is real," she cried, her voice ringing across the square. The children rushed forward, their hands reaching out. The boy gave spoonful after spoonful, their weak faces glowing as strength returned. Mothers wept as they watched their children eat. Elders touched the food with trembling fingers, whispering prayers of thanks. The chief stepped forward and took a bite himself. Tears filled his eyes. He raised his staff high and declared, "The human has saved us. The curse of hunger is broken." The crowd erupted into cheers, voices echoing through the dry fields. They shouted the boy's name, lifting their hands toward him. For the first time in memory, their village was alive again. But the machine did more than give food. The steam condensed into clean water, dripping into bowls and jars. Children laughed as they filled their cups, splashing one another with joy. The people who once doubted, who once mocked, now knelt before the boy, calling him savior. Yet the boy did not smile in pride. He looked at the machine with tired eyes, whispering, "It is only the beginning. This will feed you today, but tomorrow you must learn to make more. You must learn to build for yourselves." The chief bowed his head. We will learn. You have shown us the way, human child. You are not just our guest, you are our family now." The little girl tugged at the boy's sleeve and said softly, "You came with nothing but scraps, and you gave us life. How can we ever thank you?" The boy looked at her with a small smile. "You already have. You believed in me when no one else did." As the sun set, the village celebrated. Fires burned, music rose, and laughter filled the air once more. The boy sat quietly at the edge of the square, watching them. He felt warmth in his chest, not from the fire, but from belonging. For the first time since he had left his own world, he did not feel alone. But not everyone celebrated with joy. The elder who had doubted from the start stood in the shadows, His face dark with pride and anger, he muttered, "A human child has shown us our weakness. We depend on him now. What will become of us if he leaves?" Yet his words carried no weight anymore. The people had chosen hope, and the boy was their hope. As night fell, the chief gathered the villagers around the machine. "We will not let this be the work of one child alone," he said. "We will build more. We will learn. This invention will not only feed our children, it will feed generations." The villagers cheered, their voices united. The boy stood, his small frame glowing in the firelight. He looked at them and said, "Trash is only trash if you give up on it. But if you look deeper, if you believe, it can become the key to survival. Remember that, because life itself is the same." The villagers bowed their heads, the words sinking into their hearts. They knew their world had changed forever. They knew that this human child, who arrived with nothing but scraps, had given them more than food. He had given them courage, knowledge, and a new way to see life. The little girl took his hand, her voice soft but full of strength. "You are not just a boy anymore," she whispered. "You are the hero of two worlds, yours and ours." The boy did not answer, but he squeezed her hand gently. Above them, the stars shimmered in silence, and in that silence, a human child stood in the heart of an alien village, not as a stranger, not as a wanderer, but as a savior, the one who turned trash into hope, the one who gave life where there was none, the one they would never forget.